Hello, Money Kids. Welcome to the Money Kids Playground. In today's episode, we are going to be traveling back into time to learn about the barter system. But quickly, before we go further into today's class, I would like you to go back to lesson one if you haven't gone through lesson one. If you also haven't done your activity for lesson one, this is a good time to quickly go back and get it done. We'll be going back into time to learn about the barter system and why it wasn't as easy as it sounds. Get ready for some fun experience in today's class. I remain your coach, Dami. So today's topic is before money. Of course, what happened before money existed? Before money ever existed, there was a system of transaction and it was called the barter system. If you remember or you recall vividly, lesson one, we spoke about or we discussed briefly the barter system. This lesson, we are going to be going into more details about the barter system. So what is the barter system? So the barter system simply, we are going to be taking a very long trip back into time to discover how people traded before money. Remember, our forefathers had businesses, transactions going on even before money ever existed, and that's what we called the barter system. So what is bartering? What is bartering, or what is the barter system? So bartering simply means trading something without using money. So you are trading an item for another item. You are trading your toy for some bananas, or bananas for some oranges, or whatever it is. But basically the transaction does not require money. Any form of money it doesn't require. So an example would be, I'll give you some milk and you give me some bananas. Take example again, two farmers. Farmer A has rice and farmer B has salt. So farmer A and farmer B trades their rice for salt. Farmer A trades his rice for salt, and farmer B trades his salt for rice. But of course, this wasn't a very easy transaction. Example, you have a cow. Your mommy has a cow, or you have a farm and you're rearing cows, and then you needed some grains. I mean, maybe rice, beans, millet, name them. And then you go to the grain farmer, and you, who is the cattle farmer, take some cows to go get some grains. That's an exchange. And then, say for someone who has a shopping list, you have a large shopping list, and then you trade that for some eggs, granuts, burgers, potatoes, and you trade it for your service and time. So you don't get to pay for it, but you provide service to the other person, the other party rather, who is involved in the trade. Now this worked, but it was not always great. It didn't always end well, as they had lots of challenges with measuring value. So what exactly was the problem? There are quite a number of problems that the people who were involved in this kind of transaction had. I mean, people who were in the old had, that made or gave need to the rise of money. One of the problem we had was, what if I didn't need what the other person had? So I have shoes and the other person have salt. But I don't want salt, but I want to trade my shoes for maybe cattle. But the other person who is available to trade does not have cattle. What the person has is salt. So you see, this made trading very difficult. It made transaction incomplete, very stressful and inconvenient, right? We'll also be exploring more options, more reasons why it was very inefficient, because it was the inefficiency of the barter system. I mean, the barter system was not meeting the needs of transaction. It wasn't making transaction very convenient and a successful one, because a transaction is said to be successful when both parties are happy with whatever they are getting in exchange for whatever they are giving. So if I want a cow and I'm giving out a shoe, and the other party doesn't have a cow, is giving me rice, I won't be happy with that transaction because it is not what I wanted. So you see, this made This was one of the reasons that made the barter system very, very inefficient. So few more reasons why it was inefficient is finding the perfect match was very hard. So you see, you had to find someone who had what you wanted and who what, right? Who had what you wanted and who wants what you had. So if the person doesn't have need for what you have to exchange, or the person doesn't have what you need in exchange for what you have, that becomes a problem. So you have to travel cities, travel communities, several villages to find someone who needs what you want. So that makes it very, very difficult to achieve. Right. And then number two, we have no clear price tags. You know, when you go to the supermarket, you see the price of your crunchies, you see the price of your cheese balls, your chocolates, your biscuits, your candy. They all have their price tag. You can just pick them and then you go to the counter and pay the same amount you saw on the price tag, right? But during the barter system, there were no price tags, right? There are no price tags. It was the parties involved in the exchange that determine the value of whatever they are exchanging. So there was no easy way to say how many bananas will equal to a pair of shoes or how many cows you need to give to get a bag of rice. There was no way to measure what quantity of beans you would need to give in exchange for some tubers of yam. There was no quantity to measure the amount of labor you have to give in exchange for some palm oil or some palm fruits. It was just very difficult. So there was no clear price. So it's safe to say that it wasn't this system wasn't universally acceptable, because in some communities you can find them trading 10 tubers of yam for a bag of rice, and then you go to another community, they are trading 5 tubers of yam for a bag of rice. So it can vary. So when you travel from one state to another or one community to another, you have this challenge of, oh, in my community I had changed exchanged 10 tubers of yam for a bag of rice. But well, they'll tell you in their community that's not what happens, right? Because the people or the parties involved in the transaction, in the exchange, are the ones who determine the value of the items they are exchanging. Number three, big things were hard to share, right? So you want bread. You know, bread is not as big as cow. So you can't share cow. You can't share a cow. Like you can't share it in half just to buy some bread. Or say you want some sugar. You want some maybe you want water, right? You can't, and what you have is cow. You can't cut your cow into pieces to buy water. You want, let's say, just some amount of candy, not much, just a little quantity. You still cannot cut your cow to get small quantity of candy. Do you understand? So it was very difficult to share larger things to get small things. So you know, currently, if you need to buy your lollipop, you don't need to go with so much money. You just need around 100 naira, 200 naira, 500 naira, you're good to go, right? You can get a candy, a very nice candy for yourself. But in the olden days, there was no money, so you needed to go with what you have. So if it's a cow you have to take that cow to go get a candy, and that's, in fact, carrying the cow to the place you need to get the candy is a whole lot of stress, right? So transporting what you have to go get what you need was also a challenge, right? So if the person who had what you want is not in your community, within your environment, you would have to travel long distance to go meet the person to get the exchange done. And sometimes you might finish traveling or you might embark on that journey and still not find someone who is willing or who needs what you have or who has what you need to ensure that the transaction gets completed. Number four, stuffs didn't last forever. So those food stuff, because majorly what they were exchanging were food items. And remember, when it comes to food items, they are quite seasonal, right? It's currently raining season, and then during dry season there are some food items that are in season, and there are some that are out of season already. So now that it's rainy season, you have a lot of fresh fruit, right? As soon as we go into the dry season, you won't find most of these fruits because they are perishable goods, so they cannot last as long as the dry season, right? So this was a challenge, because if I want to exchange a perishable crop and the other person has a non-perishable crop, it will be a challenge. And what if I didn't need that perishable crop at the moment? Right. So you see, this became a challenge. wanting some good spoiled or went bad before you could even trade them. So you want to trade your tomatoes or your apples, and because you didn't find someone who had what you want, or someone who wants the apples you have or bananas you have to travel miles. So while traveling, because the goods are staying longer, they get to perish, they get to be bad, they get bad before you arrive at the trading point, or before you finally find someone who needs what you have. So this was also a challenge for the barter system. Lastly, another challenge was carrying trades was tiring. I earlier explained this, right? Carrying trades was tiring. Imagine having to travel with 10 cows just to go get bag of rice. Or imagine to drag 15 bags of rice just to go get clothes, right? It was so exhausting. But these days, you want to get clothes, you just need to get some money. In fact, you don't even need to carry physical cash. You just go with your phone, and with your account on your phone, you just go into the supermarket, you pick what you want, and then you make the transfer, and that transaction is complete. The vendor is happy, and you who went to do the shopping is also happy, right? But you see, with the barter system, because they were exchanging items, it was very tiring to travel long distance with their items to go get it exchanged. So you see, all these challenges gave rise to the need for a more efficient means of exchange. And this is that is universally acceptable, which is what? Money. Money is universally acceptable. Now let me ask you this quickly. Have you ever thought what made people agree that 1,000 is 1,000? Like, what made them, how did they come to a consensus? How did they come to agree that, oh, this paper, because literally money is paper, right? Think about it. You can pick money as I'm speaking to you now. It is paper. It is just paper. But what happened that everybody everywhere now agrees that this is 1,000, this is 500, and this is 200, and you can use it to buy something? What made them agree? What made them come to this conclusion? Why not a random paper? Why can't I cut a paper from my book and then I just present it as 1,000 naira and they accept it? What made them agree on that? So if you've ever asked yourself that question, this class is going to answer that question for you. So stick around, we are not done yet. So since then, money has evolved from shells to cowries to coins to paper bills. In fact, at some point, people were trading gold. They're using gold to make purchases. So they had their gold bars stacked in their houses, and then they would take it along in bags when they are going for transaction business trips to go buy items for their business or for their family. But they had the challenge of weight. Gold bars are very heavy. So it was almost the same thing with trading your food items, right? So imagine carrying 1,000 gold bars to travel a long distance just to go make a transaction. That was also a limiting challenge to the people, right? So at some point, the people started keeping the gold bars with some regulatory bodies, and then those regulatory bodies give them a paper note, right? A paper note, which of course brought about the existence of paper bills. I mean, the paper money bill, that was how the paper money came into existence. So those regulatory bodies gave them those paper bill as a proof that they have some gold bars with them. So they go around with that paper instead of the gold bar itself to go get their goods. So those whoever they tender or give that paper note to, that person can go back to the regulatory body and take up the quantity that was issued to them during the transaction. So that way they didn't have to carry the gold bars around. Same thing applied to coins. Coins were quite heavier, and then at some point coins, because they were metals, they were easily duplicated. So you see blacksmiths, someone would just go randomly and then duplicate the coin, and it was just easy to it was very hard to identify which was fake and which was real, because they're all metals and they looked alike. They were silver, they were gold, they're shiny, and bronze, and they looked so much alike, same weight, same color, same size, same shape, and it was very difficult to decipher which one, or to spot which one was the fake or which one was the original, right? So those were challenges that this money had. The money that was used after the barter system, the immediate barter system, before we now had the paper bills, and then we now had ATM cards, and then we currently have mobile or digital money, and then we even have cryptocurrency such as Bitcoin, Ethereum, and the likes of them, right? So Bitcoin are they're still money. Yes, you can call them money. So Bitcoin is money, even though it's a store of value too, but it's money, digital money, right? And you can spend it. There are stores or business types that accept Bitcoin as a means of exchange, right? So why money helped? How did money solve the problem? How did the introduction of money solve the problem of the barter system? So money became a common tool that everyone could use to buy or sell without having to need what the other person have. Now remember, in the barter system, there was need for you to have need for what I had, and me having need for what you had, to ensure that the transaction is complete, right? But when money came into being, I could just take up my money and go buy whatever I want without you getting having to be forced to take what I have at whatever condition or whatever quantity. Now, because both parties have to want what the other person has to offer, and they both get to agree on the relative value of each item. Remember, the people involved in the transactions are the ones who decide the value of each item. So which is most time very difficult, having to determine the value of each item, the value of your rice, the value of your beans, the value of the yam, and every other thing was very, very difficult, right? So this gave rise to the need of what? Money. So when money came into existence, money served several purposes, right? One of which was what? Convenient means of exchange. Using money to initiate a trade was very, very convenient. And money was also used as a store of value. You want to store value for a long time, you can store it in wealth, store in money rather, right? So, and then it was a standardized measurement of value. It was universally acceptable as well, and it was regulated by the government. That's why everyone can see 1,000 and they agree to it, because there's a body that regulates the production of this money or the issuance of this money to the public. And for Nigeria, the body that regulates money in Nigeria is called CBN, Central Bank of Nigeria. Right. So if you haven't heard that, you'll be hearing it in today's class. So the body that regulates the flow of money in Nigeria is called CBN, Central Bank of Nigeria. So this is the reason why it is that body that makes money a legally acceptable tender. So anywhere you go to with Nigerian currency, it is well known because there's a body that regulates it. So that body puts a policy on it and makes that money, although paper gives that money a value that is universally accepted. So you cannot see 1,000 and tell me it is 500, because the body that issued it already assigned the value of 1,000 to that money. You cannot also see 200 naira and call it 500 naira, because the body that issued it has already assigned the value of 500 naira to the money. Do you understand? Are you following me? So it is rather regulated by a body that makes it universally acceptable. So because of this body, this is why no one can argue what value a particular currency is, what value it is. We didn't have to now decide, oh, what's the value of this? No, the money already has its value. You just go to the market and buy what is equivalent to the value of the money you have. So when you go to the market with 1,000 naira notes, you can't buy something of 2,000 naira, because the value you're holding, the value of the money you're holding is just 1,000 naira. So the value is already defined in itself as money, right? So when you go with 500 naira, you can't purchase items worth 1,000 naira with the 500 naira, because the value has been determined. So it was easy, or it is now easier to determine the value of items with the existence of money. So money equal to fairer and easier trade. Fairer and easier trade. So the existence of money has made trading very, very easy, very, very fair to accomplish. So right now that you know about the history of money and you've heard how the barter system operates, what would you like to trade if there are no money? What would you trade? What would you give in exchange for what if there are no money? So what you are expected to do in this section is to draw or write your own barter trade. What would you like to trade for what? Do you want to trade your toy, for example, for some candy, or a candy for lollipop or some biscuits? So just draw yourself giving out whatever you're giving out as means of exchange, and then the other person, who could be your friend or whoever, giving you whatever they are giving you in exchange for that. Remember, no money is involved, or no money should be involved. So this is a fun fact, right? So long ago, people even used cowries. Of course, I said cowrie. So just in case you don't know what a cowrie look like, this is a cowrie. So in current day, or in modern day, people use cowrie now as accessory, adornment accessory. So this can be used for hair, necklaces, handbands, hand beads, leg beads. It's no longer used as a. So to recap what we have learned, everyone after the barter system, everyone now wanted money, right? As it is a unit by which every other thing else was measured or can be measured. So now that money is existing, or money is in existence, every other thing can be measured by money. So I can know how much quantity, or what quantity of rice I can get with 5,000 naira. I know what quantity of beans I'm going to get with 2,000 naira. I know what quantity of books I'll get with $1,000. I know what quantity of land I can buy, or what hectare of land I can buy with $100. I know how many dresses I can buy with $10. So you see, because of the existence of money, every other thing what can be measured. So you can now sell your bananas for money instead of getting another commodity in return. So the challenge of the barter system no longer exists in today's trading system. Right. So what would be your trading story? Remember to do your activity before our next lesson, which will be coming up in a few days. Thank you so much for joining. See you in the next lesson. Bye.